Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to HerbRally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. We have over 676 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes, and you're bound to find something of interest. So before we get into the show, I want to tell you about Locust Light Farm. It's run by Amanda Crook. She came out with a Choose Your Own Adventure email series. It's kind of like those nostalgic books we used to read back in the day where you choose your own adventure, but this is specifically geared towards the herbalist. And so basically what she does is sends you a new chapter each day via email where you get to choose what the character in the story does. And again, the character is basically it's set around herbalism and whatnot. So if you'd like to learn more, I will leave a link in the show notes. And actually several episodes back in the HerbRally podcast, Amanda narrates the first couple chapters. You can find that on the podcast as well as our YouTube channel, which I'll leave a link to the video. And you're also able to get the first chapter for free. But if you want to continue the story, it is only $21. And again, I'll leave a link to the forest story in the podcast show notes. So today's episode is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour. And in this episode, I'm joined by my good friend, Christa Sinadinos. Christa wrote the epic tome called The Essential Guide to Western Botanical Medicine. We chat a bit about that in this episode. We also get into her childhood, when she got into herbalism, some Michael Moore stories. We talk a lot about, she talks a lot about hops, who has inspired her along her journey, along with her book, and a whole lot more. So it was a lot of fun to hang out with Christa via Zoom. I sure wish we could have done it in person. Amanda and I last year, at some point, we went down to Arcata and hung out with Christa and recorded some HerbRally Schoolhouse stuff and some YouTube videos. And she's a absolute hoot. And I really, really love this episode, and I hope you love it as well. So thanks to Christa for joining me on the show. Also, before we get into the show, I want to let you know about our YouTube channel. We have been releasing new herbalism videos each and every day, including the Herbalist Hour interviews. If you'd like to see our faces for these interviews, you can check out our YouTube channel. Simply search HerbRally in the search bar or go to youtube.com/c/HerbRally. And please hit subscribe because, like I said, we come out with new herbalism videos every day along with the videos to the Herbalist Hour. And last but not least, I would like to thank our HerbRally Schoolhouse members for your support. It really means a lot to Amanda and I. So thank you so much. If you'd like to learn more about the HerbRally Schoolhouse, simply go to herbally.com/schoolhouse. And if you'd like to get your first 30 days for free, you could enter coupon code podcast at checkout. And then it's only $10 a month after that. And it really helps support the podcast, the YouTube channel, and everything else we're doing here at HerbRally. And we also, there's also a member area where there's exclusive video classes and whatnot there as well. So one more time, herbally.com/schoolhouse. And a huge thank you to all of our members. And now on to today's episode. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
So welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Christa Sinadinos. Christa is the author of this epic tome I have here in front of me. It's called The Essential Guide to Western Botanical Medicine. And I'm actually really excited to delve in more into the story of this book, because I keep telling people probably misinformation. I keep telling people Christa spent like 30 or 40 years on it, and I know that's probably not actually true. I tend to be hyperbolic sometimes. But anyways, welcome to the show, Christa.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here, Mason. Great to see you again. I'm thrilled and appreciative for the opportunity. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more. We went down to Arcata, I want to say last year sometime, and spent a day with you recording some YouTube videos and HerbRally Schoolhouse stuff. And that was a lot of fun getting to hang. But now maybe we could get to know each other a little bit more. So I'm curious, what was a young Christa like? Were you always into plants, or what was that like?
Oh, yeah. young Christa. And like, I hold her tenderly, you
I love
know?
that.
Yeah, I was a really curious child. I had a very active imagination, super independent and adventurous and probably like a little dangerously fearless. Um, and I
Makes
had like,
sense.
yeah, I did some things. I'm like, oh, if you know, as a mom, I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I never would let my kid do that. But you know,
Totally.
I'm more protective and careful now. And what I grew up in Michigan. So we had at the time, like, you know, before they constructed a bunch of new places, we had woods behind our house and we had woods at my grandmother's house that, you know, I ran around in for most of my life, especially my younger years, you know, and we also spent a lot of time like going up north and in northern Michigan. And, you know, you probably know living now in Wisconsin, you
Yeah,
know.
is that like the UP is what you're referring to? The
Well, it
Upper
wasn't quite
Peninsula?
the UP, but
Okay.
northern Michigan. So before you know, it's, you know, if you're looking at
Totally, yeah.
it's up here. So
Yep.
so anyways, I don't know if that's reversed because of the screen here, but
Right, right.
yeah, I was always outside, you know, catching turtles and frogs and releasing, you know, building forts, swinging
Hmm.
on willows, walking trails barefoot. I was kind of like a feral child. I was always barefoot, skinned up, you know, legs, bruises, broken bones, just having a good time. And yeah, I felt like, you know, I was also the eldest in my family, so I had kind of a deeper sense of responsibility and kind of, you know, taking care of my younger siblings and cousins, and you know, a lot of people looked up to me when I was, or not looked up to me, but like I was kind of in charge as
Sure.
the young person. I was the mother unit, you know, neighborhood babysitter. Um, yeah, what else? I mean, still a lot of similar things when I think about it. Like I was very ambitious, you know, I worked really hard, you know, kind of goal oriented. I liked business when I was a kid. I
Really?
like, yeah, I actually did. I was like,
Lemonade?
no, not they didn't have the lemonade thing going yet, but when I was, I think it was in fourth grade, a good Greek friend of mine, Jenny, and I started a business. And we typed up these little, you know, tabs and walked around the neighborhood and introduced ourselves. We did gardening work. We did, you know, for like $1.50 an hour. Or no, I think it was $1 a piece. And
Wow.
we were like, we'll clean your car, we'll clean your house, we'll walk your pets, we'll, you know, whatever. Mow your lawn. I was like, I just want to make some money as a kid. And I was like thrilled when we made like $7. It was like hitting up. I was like, oh, we did it. We did it. So yeah, I definitely you know, all those things are still a part of me. And I love the plants at a young age. I didn't know, you know, how to use them as medicine per se.
Mm.
You know, I would watch my grandmother like sedate my cousin with chamomile, or like, you know, my hyper cousin, she's always like, well, we're going to give that one some tea. Or, you know, I had trees all around because it's Michigan. So, you know, we'd like, you know, create a tree mother and spend like every afternoon cuddling under the pine tree and just, you know, talking to her. It was like they were characters. So like I said, active imagination. And I felt like I was able to like connect with the willows and the pines and, you know, I love the smell of pineapple weed, and I like rub that
Mm.
on myself as perfume and make all these little concoctions. And I wish I had known an herbalist at the time, because I think I could have started my training back then, you know. I was like, I remember eating like wild carrots and I was like, Jesus, what was I doing? You know, who taught me to do that? You know, I could have had a hemlock, but I knew the
I was gonna
carrots.
say.
But I survived. The difference between an early herbalist and a early mycologist, you live through it when you're an herbalist most of the time.
So,
So
dear listener, if you're a young budding herbalist, don't go out there eating wild carrot, because it could very well be poison hemlock. But
correct.
besides that, I am curious. You mentioned your cousin being calmed down with chamomile by your aunt or something like that.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that an actual story? Do you remember like noticing that? And was that actually happening?
Yeah, so I, you know, half my family is Greek on my father's side.
Sure.
And or I should say my family on my father's side is Greek. They came over from Greece. And you know, herbs were a way of life. They really, like my yaya, which is the Greek name for a grandmother, she had a garden until she basically died, at almost 99. So she always grew food and just, kept her small garden, had herbs, had her apron on, and always had herbs in her apron, or like drying on paper towels. And yeah, she liked to sedate kids. She had a bunch of them around. I took that principle into my life. My favorite thing, and like nervines for children. So yeah, I had a couple hyperactive cousins, but she did like to give one in particular chamomile to calm them down. And then, she just integrated all the other herbs just into food, parsley, oregano, thyme. The Greeks love to use a lot of like cinnamon and clove and savory cooking, and citrus. And so, yeah, all those, those aromas and flavors are just, instantly transport me,
Totally.
So yeah, just kind of the common kitchen herbals. So yeah, she definitely used herbs just for everyday life and maintaining health and wellness. And on my maternal side, my grandmother, they were poor. So they either had a garden or, put a lot of food by. We were always picking berries for them. And she'd make like pies, preserves, pickles, all the things you do as a person who, can't buy a lot of stuff out. So yeah, I feel like, plants were kind of inadvertently always a part of my life, and, health, nutrition, stuff like that.
Yeah. I want to say there's a lot of overlap between frugality, culinary arts, and herbalism. And I've been in your kitchen before, and you whipped up some delicious snacks for us. So for Amanda and I, but yeah, also you brought up clove. I really gotta, do you have clove in your book? Do you know?
I do.
I got to check that out, because that plant has been fascinating me recently. There's something about when I consume it, I really like the energy that it gives me. I don't know what it is about it, but I really appreciate clove a lot. If I were to say, someone in the HerbRally audience said they appreciated when I asked this question in a previous interview. If I were to say, what was your gateway herb? Do you have a gateway herb? Like, was there one that kind of brought you really full-fledged into herbalism, or?
Oh, that's a good one. There were plants. The first one that comes to mind really is like red clover, because it grew around the field. It's such a gentle plant. Yeah. It grew around the fields of Michigan. I'm kind of like between that and nettle. But nettle, I'm like, I was always getting whipped by that when I was mountain biking or like hiking. So I didn't have as much of an appreciation for that. But yeah, red clover. It was one of the herbs that, I know at some point you're going to ask like how I got into herbalism, but it was one of the really gentle lymphatic herbs that helped usher me out of a health condition I had in my teenage years. And it was just subtle, effective, kind of a mild plant, but I just felt like it was, I don't know, it was perfect, gentle, delicate flower that really helped me through. And it was abundant. Yeah. So that's one of my gateway herbs.
I love that. Yeah, it does seem to be a lot of herbalist gateway herbs are kind of the more common weedy species. Mine, for example, I say this ad nauseum on the podcast, was dandelion. So yeah, kind of similar there. But so Christa, how did you get into herbalism?
So let's see here. When I was right before I entered high school, like actually 2 weeks prior to entering high school, my father had kind of a sudden tragic death. And he was in a foreign country. And anyways, I was like, my family didn't really talk much about stuff or process stuff. I didn't really have the tools to grieve at the time. And it's like, okay, you're starting high school, let's go. And, you kind of go through this deep, intense, trauma situation. And I couldn't really talk about it or process it. It was like, okay. So I stuffed it, and it was, and then I got sick. Go figure. Was super depressed, and then ill, and I just didn't have the tools at the time to address those. And I got very sick with a viral infection. It like went on, and they're like, we don't know what to do for you. Like, we can give you an IV, but it's a virus. We're not sure. So good luck. And I eventually met a person who I work, I was like a TA at this camp, and she introduced me to medicinal foods. She was one of my counselors, and she was doing her thesis on medicinal foods. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I think I'm going to read this. And I just started reading cover to cover. And I was like, this is awesome. All these foods are medicinal. I could be using these to heal myself. And then just these simple herbs. And from then on, I just got my hand on whatever few books were available at the time, Jethro Cloths, anyways, I started reading. So that's what initiated my journey. And by the time I was in 10th grade, I was like, I want to study plants. I don't know how, or I didn't know if it was herbs, natural medicine. Like I knew I needed to study that. And there wasn't really, I didn't know of any schools at the time. I was searching for schools, and it was like naturopathic schools, kind of what was available, but it was money, a little too much money for me.
Totally.
So I eventually, I don't know, I was like a hippie child in Michigan. There were no herbalists then. Like nowadays, there are herbalists everywhere, there's a school, north, south, east, west in each state, or 10 of them, you got online access, but I didn't know any herbalists. The herbalists were like old hippies who smoke pot. And now young hippies who smoke pot. No. And so at the time I was like, I got to figure this out. I went to a rainbow gathering, and I was trying to identify a passion flower at the time. And I ended up, somebody walked up to me, and he was wearing a sarong and long, kind of wild hair. And it was black, long.
I know what you're talking about.
And his name's Seven Song. He's a good friend. And we're figuring out this plant. And then I started talking to him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think he was doing an herb walk at the time. We ended up chatting for a long time. And I was like, do you know of any herbal schools? And he said, well, I went to California School of Herbal Studies, but I'm checking out this guy, Michael Moore. I'm going to be going to school in, a year and a half or something like that. And I was like, really? I'm going to check that out. Because it was only, Rosemary School at the time. And then like Susan Weed at the time, maybe teaching an apprenticeship or something.
Sure.
And I couldn't find much else. And he told me about Michael's school. And then we both ended up going to school there at the same year, and becoming friends, once I found out about Michael's school, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's affordable. He covers physiology. I remember trying to grasp, constitutional concepts at the time, and reading Ayurveda, and Chinese medicine to me was like so confusing at that time, but I loved Ayurveda, and I was like, I want to go there. I gotta study with this guy. And he seems brilliant and affordable. And I bought a few of his books in high school, and I was like, these are hilarious, so cool. And ended up, that's how I ended up becoming an herbalist, is going to a school. I wasn't really sure at the time. I was like, I'll go here, and then I'll go to naturopathic school if I can afford it, or get residency somewhere. And then I just remained an herbalist. And I don't want to say just remained an herbalist, but like it blossomed into becoming an herbalist. I didn't know I'd be a practitioner, but it evolved. And I'm so grateful and honored that I had the opportunity to study with him, and then, meet Seven Song and Myron Hardesty, and just a lot of friends who've become like lifelong friends after it's been almost 30 years now. So it's sweet to kind of share this journey with people over decades. And, some of our friends or families are growing up, and other kids are having kids. And, like Greta de la Montagne is an amazing herbalist. She was there the year before. We're both in our hippie buses, and, like road dogging it. And anyways, so that's how I became an herbalist, was, seeking out a good school, something that was affordable, something that covered wet physiology. And Michael's the one who kind of came through for that. So I'm so grateful I studied with him.
Yeah, Michael Moore really left a legacy. That's so cool to hear that you were in the same graduating class, if you will, with Seven Song, and that Greta was the year before. We're going to go off script a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about Michael, and maybe just tell us a story or something that you really like, a lesson you learned from him?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of a specific story, but he was such a character, like he was brilliant. He was naughty, and at the time I wasn't as naughty. I didn't really understand. I was like, whoa, he's really getting in there. He's funny, saying some, he had a wicked sense of humor, and he would say these things, and like a few minutes later, I'm just laughing my ass off. He's such a crack up. Definitely a little irreverent. And I just remember like walking in, and this guy's like sitting there with this cigarello, those brown cigarettes, and he's got a motorcycle vest, and he's sitting on top of this stool. He had like this presence, and this wall of herbs, and just like he's talking, and the whole time, like, he wants to be smoking that cigarello, but he's using it kind of as his wand. And, he's going on these long stories. And then after a while, I was like, okay, we're an hour and a half in, like, what the hell is he talking about? And then he just bring it all together, and somehow he connected all in about herbs. And, you'd be talking about methamphetamines and the Third Reich, and then bringing it back to Ocotillo or something like that. And you're like, where did this all just go? So anyways, that was in the day where we were in school for like 6 hours, 4 days a week. And you could tell long stories like that. Now people don't have the attention span, for more than like quick clickbait, but we were captive. And I don't know, he had a very gentle heart, but he was very gruff kind of on the outside. But one of the things that he left as his legacy was basically creating, pulling and drawing from all the early eclectics and physiomedics who had, created a sort of system, in medicine, merging Western physiology and, medical knowledge at the time. And he took that into, the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and created a system of constitutional medicine, kind of based in parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system stress. And other students like myself have studied that and used that in our practice. And, there were things, there were some gaps there. And I was like, okay, I want to understand this better, delve deeper, better understand the thyroid and endocrine system concepts that maybe weren't as available then. But anyways, he left this legacy of constitutional medicine, inspired many, many herbalists to, use bioregional herbs. He used what's growing like right around you. He was, desert mountain guy, very earthy persons, quick-witted. I'm like, what? I know there's many stories. I'm like, one story doesn't come to mind right now, but like just his character and his essence. And I gotta say, the one thing I loved most about him is just how real he was as a person, and like no false pretenses. It wasn't like he was there, dinging a chime in New Mexico, or waving a crystal wand over you, or like talking essences. Like he definitely channeled the plants, and this amazing information, but it was grounded practical information, and he was such a real person. It's like, let's talk sex, drugs, rock and roll, little nasty stuff here and there, and he was fucking funny. And we just, I love his classes were entertaining. He was a great storyteller. And, I remember coming to California afterwards. I'd never been to California, and I actually moved here eventually. And it was like, I remember a couple of herbalists like, oh, he smokes cigarettes and he's not a vegan, and he eats bacon. I'm like, fuck, And so it just was a great lesson for me as, at the time I was, 18, 19, going to a school, to accept people as they are, because, I just, everybody's different. We all have to meet our clients wherever they're at in life, whatever they're eating, whatever, like with their budget, all that stuff. And he was real. And it really helped me to see that at a young age, where, most of the other herbalists at the time were like vegetarians, and non-smokers, non-drug doers, non-drinkers. It was like a pure lifestyle with a new age wand, like sitting under the triangle, or like,
right,
the other side, or they were studying, acupuncture, herbal medicine, and going outside of the country. So he definitely embraced what we got here in the West, and physiology, and then the old eclectic information, and kind of brought that into the present. And hopefully that's what all of his, students like myself and Greta and Nicole Telkes, and, other people of his lineage will continue to do, like help evolve his work and take it to the next step, and I've heard this year, they're going to be doing a talk at the American Herbalist Guild and discussing his lineage, and Donna Chesner's kind of passing along the torch to Nicole and Greta to, revamp his website and continue to make his information, available to the public. And, he really loved sharing a lot. Like, he was so generous with his information. Like, before the internet days, he had a website and he scanned in thousands of pages of eclectic documents and made those available, which, they were usually $1,000 a piece, for each of those books. And so I really appreciate all of his labor of love in doing that and cataloging that information. And, that's what we're all going to continue to work to do to preserve his legacy.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I want to say it's swsbm.com, and I'll leave a link in the show notes. And currently, it's probably still the previous iteration of the website, but there is all of Michael Moore's classes, from what I could tell, for free and available to anybody who wants to sign up. But yeah, I did hear that Greta and Nicole are going to be revamping the website. So thanks for reminding me. That's awesome. So yeah, it's always so great to hear about Michael and the legacy that he left. And I could only wish that I had met him. I studied with Howie Brownstein, and Howie taught at Michael Moore School, I know, for at least several years. And one of Howie's things is, as well, as he would have these like 3-hour lectures, 4-hour lectures. And, a lot of it's kind of jokes and stories and stuff, but he always tied it together as well. So it just kind of reminded me of what you were describing Michael as. I also, you were mentioning the cigarettes. I heard probably from Howie that at the Brighton Bush Herbal Conference, he would march around on the deck of the main building with like 6 cigarettes in his mouth, like going back and forth. Have you ever heard that before?
That's surprising. He was probably doing it just to fuck with you.
Yes.
He's like, oh, we're at Brighton Bush. He's like, you look me in the eye and with a deep soul search, and I'm going to put another cigarette in my mouth. just to set the space. Keep the mosquitoes away,
Exactly. Well, thank you again for sharing about Michael. I love asking herbalists about him. So let's transition a little bit over to your book, The Essential Guide to Western Botanical Medicine. You could purchase it, I want to say, at ChristaSinadinos.com.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it really is an epic tome. For those of you that are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, it's super thick. But I'd like you to start with, like, first of all, how long it took you to write it, but also just kind of like the process of writing it, and just generally what's inside and what people can expect.
Okay. So the entire process from start to getting the book back in my hands, or receiving the physical copy of the book, took 9 years. And I spent the first 6 years basically writing, editing, revising the initial manuscript, made a lot of cuts. It was more than 800 pages at the time. And I worked closely with my primary editor, Deborah Dallinger, and then Selena Rowan also was amazing. And we would I'd pick an herb that I was going to write. I had you start out and it's like, I just want to write about herbs. And then, your editor's like, well, let's organize this a bit and come up with a format and the structure and, get this all organized. Like, well, how are you going to do this? And I'm like, I wanted to do a little too much, and I still have another tome in me, but really? We'll see. Well, yes, we'll eventually get there. But basically, I spent thousands of hours in that first 6 years, writing, researching, consolidating all of my clinical information and formulas and recipes. And then I basically write a monograph, send it to my editor. She'd send it back. I'd give it to Selena. She'd send it back, slash and burn. It was so humbling. It was beautiful. And I eventually learned, just don't take anything personally. It's just about polishing the work, And then my students would all read through it and ask questions. And anyways, it was, we spent many, many years going through each of those monographs. I think there's 129 of them total. I thought there were 130, but there were 129. A few didn't make it in, so it's okay. I'm like,
damn.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot. We did 550 pages of Materia Medica, And then I realized, I had 3 other sections of the book to write. So I probably should stop writing about plants because I have a limit to how many pages they can bind.
Right.
So I'm grateful. I had like really wonderful editors to work with. And, Selena was the botanist and scientific editor. So she, assisted me with all the description. She's like, this doesn't make sense. Let's flesh this out. She had a very agile mind, and I really appreciated working with her. And my other editor read for content, Deborah Dallinger. So basically after 6 years, I had the manuscript mostly done. And then I started working on the design of the book with a really incredible, an amazing designer, Barbara Landy. And we thought it was going to be a 4-month process, 3 to 4 months, and it took 2 years. And basically she's like, get all these, photos of these plants, get them cataloged. And I did. I spent like months and months cataloging these photos, and then I sent them all to her, and she's like, "Oh, these are horrible. Like this one's not focused enough." And, she was very persnickety about, what images we could use. So we basically spent we worked together multiple times weekly, going through, different images, selecting, and it was like sometimes we'd spend like 3 hours on one herb, picking the right photo. And I thought I would use my own photos, and did end up using some from friends, like Seven Song, Corey Pine, other people. I'm sorry, I'm not mentioning their names right now because I'm just, I'm excited.
Totally.
And then I ended up purchasing a lot of the photos, just so that we could get the right images, because I wanted to represent the plants in many stages of growth. And so, from the roots to, foliage to seeds to flowers, all of that. So, and kind of show their natural habitat whenever possible. And like the insects that love the plants, or, who not fertilized, but pollinated the plants. So there were 2 years basically of design, and, it wasn't just getting the photos, but it was like laying the book out, all the colors. I was kerning commas. I didn't even know what the word kerning meant. I think we joked about this before, but I was like kerning commas. Like I literally lost some of my vision from spending so much time on the computer, and I eventually was like, I think I really do. I'm like squinting. I'm like, oh my God, I put on these reader glasses. I'm like, I can see again. So anyway, so we went through that. And then it was the process of doing like the therapeutic section, fine tuning that. So there's a materia medica section that's 550 pages, an herbal therapeutics section that goes through common formulas, tea blends, tincture blends, topical stuff for most of the common health conditions you'd be confronted with if you're working with friends and family, or in an herb shop, or, a situation where you're hustling. You're like, I got to come up with something quick. And then, and I did like a compendium. That was the other thing that I love. I'm a nerd. I love lists. That's one of the things, I jived with Michael. I was like, I love his way of thinking and just categorizing stuff. We're both Capricorns. So I'm like Capricorns with some Gemini in there. So it's like, let's get this all organized. So, so I did I did a medicine making section. So people knew the basics of, what I'm talking about in the book. And then we did, a compendium where I went through, did a quick reference for all the common names to Latin names, herbal therapeutics. So you could just go through and quickly I've got a cold with green snot, I picked this for clear mucus, or, colored mucus, or this is a great herb for a dry cough or a moist cough, or, a spastic cough. So anyways, I went through and just geeked out on that. And Selena we had fun together doing that. And she helped me consolidate a lot of my handouts. Anyways, so there's that section. And then anyways, I'm rambling, but through that whole process, I was continuing to edit. So 8 years of editing, revising, making sure, that was the other thing. The Latin names of the plants were changing as we wrote the book. So I was trying to constantly update it, and I had to update my index. And then there were some plants rosemary, right after I published and sent it, off to be printed, rosemary switched over to salvia. So anyways, it makes me really actually happy that I organized the book according to common name because of that. And anyway, so there's materia medica, and within the materia medica, there's plant constituents, energetics, like if it's heating, cooling, moistening, drying, et cetera, et cetera. There's historical uses, for as much information as I could get, botanical descriptions, a lot of focus on the medicinal uses of herbs and the conditions they're used for, and other formulas you can integrate, or other herbs you can integrate into a formula for treatment, and then contraindications, and then a quick reference for preparations and dosage so that people can access that, and contras, and I'm overly cautious with some of my contras, but I also dissected a lot of the myths around the contraindications, a lot of myths, so anyways, I wanted to have a clinical materia medica, and I just really had a lot of juicy information that was, footnoted, sourced, had some current science, but also what was practical and what I've seen work in my patients. So that was kind of the process of writing the book. I was doing that, a couple days a week and evenings. And then I was teaching my program 3 days a week, and then I'd have my 5-year-old, my son was 5 to 13 while I was writing that. And he'd be like, Mom, are you done yet? Are you done yet? I have a question. Let's do homework. Let's do math. I was like, okay, we'll get this done. And then I was maintaining my practice for most of that too. And my pharmacy and demonstration garden. I'm like, wow, that was a lot. I eventually streamlined and would let go of one business, then another business, then my practice, and then just taught and wrote the book. And that's pretty much what I was doing to pay for my book, was pay my editors and stuff, was to keep my school going. And keep the Northwest School of Botanical Studies rolling while I was doing that. And I did my best to kick ass as a teacher and, represent. So that's a little bit about the process.
I bet it's kind of a relief to kind of be done with that, so you could kind of focus on the other areas of what you do. But it sounds like you say you have a second epic tome in you. So
in a little while.
I did want to say, or I wanted to highlight the 9 years. So LinkedIn just reminded me that HerbRally is over 8 years old now. So I could only it gave me so much appreciation knowing that you spent 9 years doing this, and it's worth every penny. I want to say it's $150. Is that about right?
It's $179, but I'll do a discount for your readers too.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Include that now that I have my new copies, my second round of copies back.
Well, that's great to hear. That means people are buying it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I am so appreciative, and I'm grateful. And I'll eventually work on an ebook. That's gonna be the next thing that I do, because it's too heavy. I feel guilty, and then people are I tried to bring this into the field, but I threw it on my back, and then people are like, I brought this on my trip, and I'm like, you put that in your it's 8 pounds.
Wow.
But yeah, it is expensive, but everyone who's bought it has said, if I could pick one book, to bring to a desert island, that was the most recent one that I got. If I could pick one book to bring to a desert island, I would choose your book.
Cool.
And I've had such wonderful feedback, and I'm so grateful. I'm so honored. I've had some of the teachers that I've respected, and authors that I read their books since I was a young person, and
cool.
And I of course included some of their references throughout the book as well. So and source them, of course, because we got to respect our lineage. But they bought the book over the years, and I'm like, I get so excited. I'm like, oh, that person bought my book. I have all of their books. It's such an honor. So anyways, thank you for asking about the book. And there's more quotes on the website, but it really is a consolidation of many different resources and clinical information. And it's a textbook, it's like something that investment that will last you for a lifetime, whether you're a student or a practitioner or just, a plant lover or a gardener. It's beautiful too. It's a gorgeous reference book. So people are like, I bet some people buy 10 copies. They get one for each family member, and they're like, I love this book. I'm giving this to my pharmacist niece. I'm giving this to my nurse. Anyways.
I wanted to say, I think 3 things about it. First of all, you mentioned someone put it in their backpack. I've been actually looking, into getting like a weighted vest because I go on a lot of walks, and I was like, oh, maybe I should up the ante. So maybe I'll just throw your book in a backpack.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, good plan.
Yeah, there you go. It's 8 pounds. So I also wanted to say, yeah, Paul Bergner, I think I told you this when we hung out, but yeah, we asked him like some of his favorite resource, and he ranted and raved for like 10 minutes about how awesome the book is. And yeah, so it comes highly recommended by Paul Bergner. So I also wanted to say, the last thing I wanted to say before we move on is, yeah, again, it's a, like you said, it's a reference book, but you also include your clinical experience in there, and you're not going to find that in a lot of, say, herbal books. So yeah, you got the monographs and whatnot, but Chris is also a highly experienced herbalist with clinical experience, and she includes that all throughout the book. So again, you can learn more and purchase the book at ChristaSinadinos.com. And I want to say it's self-published too. So a large majority of the funds go directly to Christa and her work. So that's really cool that some giant, publisher's not taking a huge cut or whatever. So
yeah, it goes to paying off my book,
right? Exactly.
It's still huge. I'm just like chipping away at it, but I'm like, I know it's gonna pay off someday. Let's
sell some books. All
right. I would
cool.
love to. I would love to. And yeah, I'm honored. Several schools now are using it as their primary.
That's awesome.
Text. So I want to continue that. I'd love to find more schools to do that. And I want to work with schools because like, it's one of the things as an herbalist now, I've been doing it 30 years. And I realize, when I teach at California school, it's like, people learn so much information, but they're like, how do we pull it all together?
Yeah.
And that is one of my gifts as a practitioner, is like having a really good overview and knowing all the details and being able to like hone in on those. And so I wanted, that's part of my next phase, is like how to bring that all together, utilize the book as a resource, and give the bigger perspective in a shorter amount of time, so that people don't have to come to Northern California in the middle of nowhere and spend, 3-4 days a week studying life, which is not realistic anymore, So, but yeah, do it in a few hours. And I've got the book, so I can be like, check that part out in the book, but let's talk about the bigger picture and then other finer details. So
I love it. Right on. Well, yeah, let's transition over to some plants. Christa, why don't you tell us a little bit about hops, aka Humulus lupulus?
Humulus lupulus. Say that 5 times.
Humulus lupulus, Humulus lupulus, Humulus lupulus.
Good job. 3 times is what I meant.
Times, yeah.
That's good enough for me. I know. I'm like, I swear, Ossifer, I haven't had anything to drink. I can say Humulus lupulus 2 times in a row. Yeah. I swear. So hops is a really fascinating, it has a fascinating history, which I probably should have reviewed a little bit more before we cover this, but
that's all good.
But anyways, it's like this amazing vining herb. And of course, you lived in Oregon, so that's like, hops country. It loves like, fertile, moist soil, like lush soil, which is part of how its name, humulus, derives. It's like humus means soil, right? And well, I thought lupulus was like a little kooky, but it's not what it means. It actually means wolf, and that's because when the vining herb would grow, it would strangle shrubbery. So they said that was like a wolf preying on its sheep, like.
Oh,
take its neck up. Anyways, so Humulus lupulus, and hoppin, hops derives from hoppin, or like to climb, because it's a vining herb. But yeah, it's a gorgeous plant to grow. I've got some growing up over my fence right now, and the primary part of the plant that's used are the strobiles, which are basically the flowers of the plant, and it's in the cannabis family, or Cannabaceae family, and what's interesting is in the early eclectic times, they used to use hops, the the lupulin, I think, or it was lupulin, I think it was what they call it. And it was more of the concentrated, the resin that the plant produced, and so they'd wait till the plants were, till the flowers were like, you could pinch them and then cut them open and you'd see this, the yellow resin in there. And they would strain that, kind of like making hashish a little. Except for like with hashish, they used to apparently run through the fields like naked and collect it on bodies. And anyways, with sorry. So they would take the lupulin and make a concentrated extract of that. And that's what they would administer as a sedative. And eventually they used just the hop strobiles and stuff. But anyways, it was used primarily as a bitter tonic and a sedative by the eclectics. But like long before, beer was made, they made ales, right? And made them with all sorts of different herbs. But they went bad a little more quickly until they discovered hops. And hops were used basically to help preserve them. And, people are like, it's because of the flavor. And it's like, actually, it's because, they are both antibacterial and antifungal, but they allow the beneficial bacteria to grow. And they allow some of the yeast to grow, but not too much, so that you can help preserve the beer. So they made highly hopped beers like IPAs. Are you going to sip any right now?
No, totally. I was actually going to ask you about the IPAs. I thought that had to do with like getting it from, say, England to India to be preserved for that amount of time. And yes, for the listener, I do got myself a nice IPA right here. So there you go. Nice.
You're drinking the wicked weed that would spoil the taste of the drink and endanger the people. According to one of the Brits. But yeah, I think initially like the French and German brewers were a little quicker to integrate it into their ale making, and eventually ales became beers. French, German, the Dutch, and then eventually the English kind of like, all right, we'll allow them. It was like Edward VI finally granted it, but it was like banned. Hops were banned for a long time. Anyways, so much great information about the history, but I'll focus on the medicinal uses because it's a phenomenal nervine and sedative. The nervine properties vary depending on a person's constitution, like how revved up they are, but I'd consider it a moderate to potent nervine. So it has a calming action on the nervous system. Depending on the quantity that you consume, it can have a sedating effect. So, a lot of people will have, a beer, which is a little more dilute than, say, a concentrated tincture extract or something like that. For the calmative properties, nervine properties, if you consume, 60 to 90 drops of like a good quality extract before you go to bed, like an hour or so before you go to bed, it's a good sedative. It can intensify dreams for some individuals. So they might, some people are like, ooh, that was kind of intense. But I like it. I love the sedation that hops brings. And then it also helps to relax skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle antispasmodic, if you're feeling like, tight shoulders, general skeletal muscle tension. Not only consuming the herb, but like I've taken a bath in hops. Like I tell students this, like when I had my herb shop and like first kind of starting teaching, I had students, we were doing materia medica, and I still have everybody try singles of each herb, right? And work with that plant for a period of time and get to know it, see how it affects your body. So I had a couple students who were brewers, and they would bring in trash bags of hops. It was great. So I'm like, all right, hops distribution. And I'm like, okay, let's everybody do a foot bath. Let's everybody do a 2-quart batch of tea. Strain that into your tub after you let it steep for a while. And so I got to work with hops quite a bit, and it was wonderful because I would strain it into the bath. And I remember the very first bath, and even baths after that, it was like, you just kind of melt in, and eventually like my muscles, I used to have grind my teeth and stuff and get tension headaches. And it was like, a full body relaxation from, submersing. And I didn't even have to take it internally. It's like the skin absorbs it all. Your skin's your most highly absorptive organ. And it was so calming and relaxing. I loved it. Quick note of warning. Some people have hops hops dermatitis. So before you submerge your entire body in it, make sure you do a little test, like patch test on the inner portion of your elbow, wait for a day or two and make sure you don't get a rash from it. And then after that, then you can do a hops foot bath or hops full body bath. But it's a little potent smelling, a little dank, but that's okay. So you can use that as a skeletal muscle relaxant for general muscle tension, bruises, sprains, strains. You can apply it topically for bruises, sprains, strains, just, tender, sore muscles. And then it's also great smooth muscle antispasmodic. So helps decrease digestive cramping, especially digestive intestinal cramping, to some extent, uterine cramps, less so the respiratory or urinary tracts. So mainly smooth muscle antispasmodic for the digestive tract and the uterus. And then, of course, it's a bitter, right? Bitter, carminative. So great herb for help stimulating digestive secretions, kind of getting a person into parasympathetic mode or that relax and digest mode. That's why a lot of people consume it with meals or prior to meals. Helps increase bile flow, decreases gas and bloating. And again, this is pure hops because some people are like, I get bloated from beer. And I'm like, well, it's beer. It's different because there's yeast and there's, grains, yeast breaking down the grains. And some people are sensitive to the gluten maybe, and it's filling, but just the pure, even like a couple sips of it. So you get that bitter triggering, that bitter reflex triggering your salivary glands and digestive secretions. So anyways, lovely digestive bitter tonic. You can consume it on a regular basis if you have weak digestion or difficulty digesting fats and proteins. And then it helps regulate, overgrowth of yeast in the gut. If you're just doing hops, not so much beer, you know what I mean? Like just because beer has yeast in it. So if you're trying to decrease excess yeast growth, you'd go for more like the pure hops or hops tea. Or
hops tincture or
hops extract. Yep. Yeah. Any of those. And it'll decrease the growth of funky bacteria and decrease the overgrowth of yeast in the gut. And then topically, good antibacterial and antifungal agent in your salves, somatations, poultices, stuff like that. It's a good galactagogue, great galactagogue. So encourages the flow of breast milk and increases the secretion of breast milk. So
so again, not beer on that one.
Beer actually, okay. So, no, beer does work. Okay. So, my midwives were like, that was one of the requirements of my midwives. They're like, make sure you've got some beer in the fridge for after the birth. And I was like, really? And I'm like,
that's funny.
Yeah, but they like the oh my God. Is it a lager? Is lager with a brown beer?
I would say, well, there's brown ale.
Amber's.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. I'm like, I love beer, but I can't drink it. I love the taste of it, but I go for the hoppy beer, but they're like, have some in the fridge and make sure to have a pint of Ben & Jerry's chocolate ice cream for us. And the beer for us. And I was like, I'm not going to drink the beer right after birth. I'm good. But, I had it for them. So anyways, good galactagogue, good for like stressful births to encourage milk letdown afterward. And I love it topically. Bruises, sprains, strains, again, so long as it doesn't cause that rash, you're good to go. But do keep an eye on the, they found it can potentially be, we need more studies, but, antioxytocic or an anaphrodisiac for people with, external genitalia, the males sometimes. And for females, it can have an estrogen mimetic effect. So kind of mimic the effects of estrogen. If you're doing a lot of it, if you're consuming it regularly, high quantities, or picking it all day long, hops pickers and stuff ended up having issues with, menstrual cycle disruption and sometimes amenorrhea, anyways. So, but some of my friends are like, oh, this is what's helping me get through menopause. drinking a couple good IPAs a day. And I'm
There
like,
you
go. I'm going for something else, but let's have fun with it. And some people smoke it,
I was going to ask you about that actually. Yeah. So I was thinking what I want to do is drink an IPA in a hops bath while smoking it. What do you think about that? Is that overkill?
You will be infusing with you will be hopping, you'll be climbing the heights. You will be like that vine, just
I like it.
Elevating loftily to the sky. Like some of my images of hops are like, like these 25-foot vines going up into the beautiful sky. So yeah, you'll be taking the hops path. And I would love to hear back from you once you do that. You let me know.
I'm going to do it.
And then sprinkle. Okay. So do an experiment where you smoke a little bit of the dried hops.
Yeah.
Broken up, because you probably have some good smoking blends, right? From
oh yeah, definitely. I've been I recently was sent by Jesus Garcia a smoking blend with it doesn't have hops in it, but Wild Daga. Do you know this one?
Oh yeah, I don't know this blend, but
it's great. So, but sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, you can finish telling me about your blend. Wow.
Oh no, I just really enjoyed smoking the Wild Daga with Jesus. We did that in Austin, then he sent me some more. So yeah, it's just kind of a new plant that I'm aware of. But I've definitely smoked plenty of the hops as well and different blends as well. But
yeah, have you tried, just out of curiosity, the hops resin in there? Like putting that in your pipe and smoking it.
Like the hashish style.
Just like our Keef style. Wouldn't that be Keef or something?
Oh yeah. I don't know these things, Christa. You would know all this. So
I do live in Humboldt County. I learned so much from my students.
Yeah, Keef. There you go.
I know. I'm like, well, what is it? But it's been great over the years because for a long time, many of my students were growers. Because
right.
Humboldt. Yeah, Humboldt County. So I learned a lot about pot, and I was very I was kind of a little more rigid about it, when as a teacher, and especially before it was legal. And I'm still kind of uptight talking about it. I'm like, sure. You have to hide if you're going to smoke it. And they're like, no, you don't. And anyways, I grew up in the Reagan era,
Totally.
Run and hide. The helicopters are going to chase you. I actually grew up in Michigan. They're like, what? Oh, that's a weird cigarette. My dad would call it Geiferdite. Anyways, I'm sorry. This is too much information.
No, this is great. The listeners want to hear it. So yeah.
The long rides drives from Michigan down to the Key West, Florida tips with 3 kids in the car. The dad smoking the Geiferdite. And
wow.
We could have benefited from hops. I'm sure we probably benefited from his actions.
Now in Wisconsin, actually, there's billboards all over the place that say legal weed is just around the corner, and basically they're advertising weed in Michigan now. Like it's where Wisconsinites go to get cannabis. So,
because it's not legal yet in Wisconsin.
It's not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hops are.
It's just, hop, skip, and a jump over.
Yeah, so exactly.
Maybe we can hook up when I'm in Michigan in July. I'll be up in Mackinac Island.
Oh, nice.
for a couple days. But anyways.
Love it. Yes.
How did we, we're on the hops train. So,
right, here we go.
So smoking it. Now I'm inspired. I might have to try smoking it and just, experimenting with something else. And, I've had the herb and blends, but I've never done the resin in particular. I've done it as a tea, and I've used it topically in oil, but yeah, so much fun stuff to experiment with. I'm always learning more about plants, and let's keep each other posted with those experiences, because they're fun to chat about.
Yeah, I was kind of joking about that trifecta of smoking, drinking, and bath, but now I think I'm going to do it anyways. And I'll report back to you in the podcast after I do that. But I will say it's been about an hour. I'm down to keep rolling. Do you want to keep rolling, or?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh my God, where's time?
No, you're good. Do you want to keep rolling, or I still? Awesome. Well, so hops. You call it a strobial. Is that technically the flower?
The strobile, yep.
Strobile, yeah.
Yep. It's a flower plant.
So speaking of strobiles and flowers, I was telling you before call, if you want to do the segment called Giving Flowers, and basically for the listener, this is where the guest offers their flowers to someone in their community who's helped them along their life or their herbal journey. So when I say, Christa, who would you like to give your flowers to? Who would that be?
So this is challenging for me because there have been many wonderful people who have helped me along the way. I do want to give flowers to Donna Chesner for she helped run the Southwest School for Botanical Medicine, for many decades, and was, the person behind the scenes keeping everything organized. So thank you, Donna, for everything you've done and continuing to bring Michael's work forward and continue his legacy. God, there's so many good people. Patricia Carizzi Howell, I'm going to give some flowers to her, sprinkle, or, shoot out a bouquet. She recently hosted, her and an amazing woman, Cassandra, hosted this incredible trip to Crete. She's done tours to Crete for, I think, 2 decades. And she was one of my colleagues and friends who was a cheerleader the entire time I was writing the book. And like after 6 years, like, I can't do this. She's like, you can do it. You can do it. We're going to Greece afterwards. And so that was like the carrot on my stick, as both of us were both Greek herbalists who run our own school on opposite sides of the country and just have lived semi-parallel lives in that way. And she hosted this really amazing trip to Crete. And she was so humble, her and her other friend who were guiding, Cassandra, and knowledgeable. And it was just amazing. It was really beautiful. Like, it brought, to be there, I could like smell smell the aromas like of growing up and my grandmother. And it gives me chills. Like, we would sit at tables together, Greek style, just a bunch of mezzas or small plates, and you're sitting there with friends on either side or family, sharing plates, sharing wine, breaking bread together, and connecting. And just that way of being is amazing. The yayas, the grandmothers, collecting the hortas, the greens, and sauteing them, and just life kind of revolving around food, making food, raising animals, right? Very connected. People are very connected with the plants. And so a shout out to Patricia Carizzi Howell for bringing that together. It was beautiful. It was amazing, and way more than I could have expected. And there's other people for shout outs, but I'm going to leave it at that because it was a magical trip and it was transformative, and just, they were so humble the whole time. It was like, we're doing this for you, like, you really felt like that. Like, you got to hike through these mountains and see the goats with bells and see plants under every rock, and, and then come and eat this amazing feast. It was, or, go to these botanical museums where, like, this man has like run up in the mountains and runs 25 miles a day and found all these fossils and has cataloged them all. And it's in this like corner of some small village in Crete. And he's got, all these cataloged plants and historical uses of plants and, things from his grandmothers and, 25 different types of dyed herbs that are laid out on a sheet. And if you dye it this way, with black walnut, here's these 5 colors. And if you dye, that the herb produces. And if you dye it with, juglans leaf, it's got, it was amazing. Sorry, I'm just rambling, but it was so, I was like in this museum, and it was incredible. Like, I just went from room to room. I felt like I was in total nerd heaven, like pulling out drawers of the herbs. And, I could almost understand what he was saying. And there was a translator, but there were times I could understand what he was saying just based on the uses of the plants and the herbs that I had researched in my book. And anyways, seeing the plants represented and all these things, it was so cool. It was amazing. So I know I just talk for hours. So shout out to Patricia, shout out to Donna Chesner, lots of love to them for the amazing knowledge and humbleness and, just generosity they've both had in their hearts for sharing herbal information and knowledge.
I'm here for it, Christa. It's all good. I'm in no time rush, so it's all good. And I do want to second Patricia Carizzi Howell. She's actually been on the podcast twice, and I want to say the past month. She's doing amazing work, and she's actually going to be living part-time in Wisconsin. So she'll be in my neck of the woods here coming soon. Also, yeah, shout out to Donna Chesner. When I interviewed Missy Rose, who was also a student of Michael Moore, she very specifically took time to honor her as well, and all the work that she does at Southwest School of Botanical Medicine. So yeah, great choices. Thank you for giving your flowers. Do you want to answer a few more questions, or
Sure.
you got to roll?
I'm game. Hopefully I can
Awesome.
answer them well. Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, I feel like I'd be remiss and a bad host if I didn't ask you about your school. So why don't you touch on the Northwest School for Botanical Studies? By the way, I got to say, you got the best, probably one of the best URLs around, herbaleducation.net. But yeah, so why don't you tell the audience about the Northwest School for Botanical Studies?
Sure. So let's see here. I've been offering herbalist training programs for 25 years. And now they're refined through the process of, the pandemic. And now I'm basically, now that I've got my book, I'm consolidating my classes and clinical programs and just offering them in 8-week to 12-week sections that build on each other. So this fall I'll be doing, continuing the medicinal herbs. I do multiple parts of that class. And, the initial program starts with, the tissues, glands and membranes. We start, astringents, demulcents, and we go over materia medica. So we look at the bigger concept of whatever system we're covering or the tissues. So, astringents, demulcents, and then we move into the different organ systems. And we'll pick 4 to 5 herbs, people read about them, and then we go through all, more specifics with the plants. And, we go from an overview, like how they're working in the body with the bitters, cholagogues, choleretics, what they're doing, which herb, highlight the actions of each plant, and then contraindications, clinical uses. So that's the medicinal herbs. And I have part 1, 2, 3. They just go on, and we'll pick, with the advanced stuff, I'll be doing more of the endocrine system with the herbs paired to that. So medicinalherbs.com. I keep those going multiple seasons. I'm doing an endocrine system class this fall. So that'll be, I really like working with clinical students and, intermediate advanced students. And that seems to be an area of study that, with Western herbalists that, we could use more advancement and education. So I'll basically be covering, going through each system from the nervous system, adrenals, all the different adrenal hormones, cortical hormones, adrenal. Anyways, so, go through DHEA, aldosterone, and and cortisol, and talk about blood sugar disorders and how those affect the adrenals, and then about pancreas, insulin, glucagon, growth hormone, how that ties in. So we're kind of looking at, thyroid issues, blood sugar disorders, nervous system and adrenal issues, neuroendocrine function, oxytocin. So we cover physiology, pathophysiology, and then kind of connect that in with the herbs. And then the materia medica portion separate. It's basically kind of how I broke down my clinical program earlier on. And then just, simple medicine making, just to make sure everybody's on track with that. So we do that once or twice a year. And then one of the things I've been really enjoying doing is mentoring, a mentorship for a private mentorship. So students, I've done different packages and stuff, but basically the folks I've worked with, they usually start with, 6 different, package of 6, and we start out and I meet them wherever they're at. So sometimes they're figuring out their new website or how to establish a practice, or, they're running their information by me. I'm editing stuff for them, or their products, how to market products. Sometimes they're running case studies by me, which I love because I miss the clinical practice, but I love activating the mind and figuring out these pathways because people aren't trained in one system anymore. You know what I mean? They're kind of like, I don't know really of a system. They're picking herbs. So I'm like, I can help you there. We can fine tune this formula and rein it in. So yeah, those medicinal herbs, the endocrine system class, clinical mentorship, all that stuff I'll be doing this fall and continuing that through spring. And then summertime, we do some, hands-on in the garden. I got a 200 herb demonstration garden here, which was a little bit neglected while I went to Greece because that was in May. So wild and weedy like me.
Yeah, there you go.
But I right now my book website has more of my current classes on it, and I'm going to be converting over my school site to my book site, so it's all in one place. But the school is herbaleducation.net, and then my book website is christasinadinos.com. But my current classes are honestly on my book website now, and I'll be updating them for fall very soon. I just finished my other round of classes, so. Anyways, so yeah, that's a little bit about my classes for now. Is that good?
Yeah. HerbRally. Christa knows her shit. So check her out, christasinadinos.com or herbaleducation.net. So well, why don't we wrap up and get to know Christa a little bit better? I'm curious, Christa, what's something that you like to do totally outside of the realm of herbalism, health? We'll even throw cooking in there. What's a random hobby of yours?
Okay, so that I like to do or that I am doing?
Yeah. We'll go with what are you doing?
Oh, well, I've been sucking at doing those kind of things. Sorry. But I really want to pick my guitar up again. I love guitar. I was beginning to learn Greek again, which was a great challenge. I love language and I love etymology and, studying words and their origins. So I studied Latin a long time ago, and I don't know, I'm hoping to engage my brain in that way. And then, something I love dancing. I loved, Afro-Cuban, Brazilian dance. I've gotten away a little bit from that, especially, during the pandemic and not being able to, inhale everybody's amazing germs and body odors, but it will come back soon and in its own new way in my new body. And what else? Yeah, I'd love to learn welding someday. I know that's kind of a weird thing, but I'm like study mycology and welding, and mycology is a little kind of plant related, but
sure.
Those are a few. I feel so boring. My sister's like, you go on vacation and you read a freaking herb book, like you read a fiction book about plants. I'm like, well, So
dancing and welding is not boring, Christa. That's
badass. I'm gonna take a welding class. I was so inspired when I was teaching down in Sebastopol. I was just taking a walk down there, and I feel embarrassed that I can't remember the artist's name, but he's got displays, these amazing recycled art that on every lawn and all throughout the town. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now, and his wife does it as well. But they make these fantastical sculptures, and I thought that's what I'm going to do when I have more time, is go back, learn how to weld, and just use all the shit in my garage and make some fun statues for my garden.
That's so cool. Have you been to Burning Man before? I
have not. I didn't, I was the earlier generation of the darn rainbow gatherings, which I'll never ever, I have not been to in 25, 30 years, but have you been to Burning Man?
No, we have something in Oregon called the Oregon Country Fair, which I kind of feel like it's comparable, but I just feel you as a welder and a dancer would probably dig.
Yes. An almost welder. I haven't welded yet.
Okay, there you go.
I'm going to. That's something I'm aspire to learn. Welding and Greek.
Well, I'm definitely going to touch base. I'll be your accountability buddy to make sure you're on it. So
thank you. Please do check with me. I'll be checking in with you about you and Amanda's garden, seeing how the garden's going. Sending you rootlets.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
Valerian.
We actually do. We want to grow up because we have a small yard, so we figure hops would be a good thing to incorporate. Well, if you have time for another kind of like personal random question,
sure.
We've got this Let's Get Deep deck, and this is just a random question. I don't know what it is, and we'll see what happens. Oh, well, you might have already answered it. Name one thing you've been wanting to do but have been putting off.
Oh. Well, it was Greece. That's what I wanted to do, but put off. Cool. I finally did it. So I did answer that question.
Yeah.
Take a nap.
You've earned it at this point.
So lie in my hammock. I'm like, I used to always have these huge goals and aspirations. It's like, what do you want to do? I want to lie in my hammock. Like
Yeah.
I've had it there. I've got a nice view of my garden. I just want to lie down. That's so unambitious. But it's nice to finally move to the other end of ambition where you're like, I just want to relax for a second.
I think that's the perfect answer for you. So we're gonna roll with it. Very good. Well, why don't we go? We'll end the show on what I've been asking this on some episodes, but what keeps you learning and growing in the field of herbalism?
Oh, that's a great question. What keeps me learning and growing in the field of herbalism? Teaching, and continuing to teach students, intermediate and advanced students who want to practice clinically. I want to see like people follow through and practice. People learn so much information. They go to all these schools and they're scared to death to practice because of whatever, for all these different reasons they're blocked. But I really want to encourage people to practice. And I am inspired by students who continue to, learn and grow and ask me questions. It's like, there's so much to learn all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I must continue studying. Endocrinology inspires me to, like we're learning more and more about hormonal systems. Like that is so fascinating to me. I mean, that's one thing I'd like to do, go back to school and study endocrinology because I just find it fascinating. And I love the fact that doctors are finally like looking at some of these things that I've been working with as an herbalist for 20, 30 years, like insulin resistance or, talking about, menopause, all that, anyway. So, and then doing the mentorship work has been really inspiring because I'm like, working one-on-one with people, help them further their practice and bring plants to the world, in their own ways, and connect people with the plants. And then like kids, I'm like, how can I start integrating adolescents? Like, teaching, and working, like my son's 17, and he's had a few friends who are like, oh, they watched some of your YouTube videos and they can't afford to go to school. So I'm like, how can we, bring this healthcare system and increase young people's awareness of just like simple things like what they're putting in their body and, that while their testosterone's really high or certain hormones are really high, that, could affect their emotions and nervous system. And like, let's talk about this and what are simple solutions and affordable solutions and ways to integrate, nutrition and basic stuff into life that's affordable, and accessible to people of all incomes. And so, young people inspire me, teenagers, kind of helping people out and figuring out those next pathways to help them feel better in life and just navigate life with a little more ease and grace,
That is so cool. Yeah, I've heard of general herbal books and kid herbal books, but we need a teenage herbal. Maybe that's your next tome. I don't want to put any more work on you, but I really appreciate you taking the time, Christa. Well, did you have follow-up thoughts on that or?
Oh no, I was just thinking the fuck you teenage herbal book. Like it doesn't have to be a tome. Like I'm thinking it's kind of short and sweet and like bite-sized.
That's a good point.
Pieces, like where they're like, I hate you, mom.
Yeah.
I hate you, mom.
Maybe
love your mother more.
maybe the teenage herbal will just not even be a book. It'll just be a TikTok page or something like that.
I'm like, they don't read books anymore. I just got to get them working in the garden. Anyway, sorry.
No, well, yeah, I did just want to say thank you for joining, but also I do want to give you credit. I want to say you have the best background on the Herbalist Hour yet. And you were saying you were organizing your book by common name, but I want to bet that those herbs are organized by Latin name. Am I correct?
Oh, you're so good. So originally they were.
Okay.
But then I had students who didn't know the Latin names yet.
Right.
So I had to organize them according to common name, especially when I had my shop and it was just, I had students of different levels working in my shop back when I had it and in this pharmacy. So, they were so resistant to learning the Latin names and eventually they did. They all learned Latin names, which was great, and the pinyin names eventually. But so right now my bulk herbs are organized according to common name. My pharmacy, all my tinctures and glycerites and which is on either side of the room. Those are all organized, of course, according to Latin binomial. And I wanted to do it here, but was met with some resistance.
That's fair. That's a good reason enough. And just for the non-herbalist out there, if you're listening for whatever reason, when we say the Latin names, it's not us showing off. It's just fun to do. Like I love just saying the Latin name of a plant. I don't know what the deal is, but it brings me great joy to say Humulus lupulus, Humulus lupulus, Humulus lupulus. So
it's so fun. It's like Harry Potter, just magical. I'm such a nerd. The etymology, there are reasons the plants have these names, like they didn't just, call them a random name. I mean, there's, people they named them after, like, a bunch of white men, but, for the species names, but there's really, once you look into the etymology, it's fascinating and it's much easier to remember the plants. Like if you're like, oh, lavare means to wash, or, Melissa is associated with bees because the bees love it, or whatever it is. Then it's like it sticks. It's not just like you're like, oh, that's why they call it that name, and then it's fun and they're exciting names. Some of them.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't know lupulus was from loop, like wolf.
Lupus, yeah.
So I learned that today. That's really neat. Well, thank you again, Christa, for taking the time. ChristaSinadinos.com, herbaleducation.net. All those links will be in the show notes. And any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Just thank you so much, Mason, for taking the time. I love HerbRally. I really appreciate your incredible efforts and bringing education to the public for an incredibly affordable rate and all this free stuff you do. And anyways, and you're a great person. You and Amanda are doing amazing work. I am so grateful and honored to be on the show. And thank you for your kind words as well about the pharmacy. And I want to interview you now just so I can do better. But I look so forward to the next time we can hang out and walk around the garden, do whatever.
Well,
just kidding.
I can't. No, you're not. I can't wait. And you know what? I got a proposal. Why don't one day you do interview me for the HerbRally podcast? But besides that, I do want to have you on for a round two because I want to say we got through about half these questions. So it was so fun to have story time, lessons we learned about hops and your journey. And I'm just stoked to have another conversation with you. And with that, thank you, dear listener, for listening. And thanks, Christa, once again for joining us for the Herbalist Hour. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much, Mason. Thank you, listeners. Bye. Be well.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving text, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.